Robin time.
Can you remember what you were doing back in 2005? Maybe watching Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, listening to 50 Cent or the Foo Fighters, or maybe playing a game like Destroy All Humans on your Xbox or PlayStation 2. Yeah, we really are all getting that old when a game like Destroy All Humans starts to seem like ancient history. But here we are, and it's probably been long enough that you can actually start feeling nostalgic for it.
Not on my watch.
Thankfully, you're gonna get that nostalgic itch scratched, as this is the year of remakes and remasters. It's time to add another one to that list. Developed by Black Forest Games, Destroy All Humans is a remake of the same game from 2005, brought over into a more modern looking engine with improved controls and new mechanics, but retaining all of the dark humour, the violent and the innocently sadistic gameplay of the original, along with the frequent mocking of communism. And if there's one thing I love, it's making fun of commies.
You want to know what's been going on around here? I'll tell you what's been going on around here. Communism, that's what.
There's a 500 million Reds who'd love nothing better than to rip that varsity sweater right off your back.
Now, Destroy All Humans makes no major attempts to mess with the formula of the original. It is a remake, but it still tried to capture the same feeling and the mechanics from the 2005 game. They've even used the original voice acting, just remastered it to make it sound like it's not coming out of a walkie-talkie that's being held underwater.
Very funny.
Play both the old and new cinematics at the same time, and it shows a pretty huge improvement in the way these have now been thrown together.
Mr. Mayor, I've lived in this town all my life, and I voted for you twice in the last election. Now I'm entitled to a gall-darn answer.
Attention, Earth creature. This planet is now part of the Furon Empire. Your benevolent masters welcome you.
This sure doesn't look like the pie-eating contest. Uh-oh.
Though in both versions, Crypto still comes across as a lovable, troublemaking little green alien, so that's a plus.
I am not green.
So if you hear like 90% of the people who are playing this thing as fans of the original and have come here to snort a fat line of nostalgia, well, then let's get right into it. Right, so the game takes place in 1957 in the United States, at a time when two of the nation's greatest fears were aliens and communists, not necessarily in that order. It was the age of the nuclear family with the backdrop of the Cold War. You've got burger joints, diners, gas stations, and houses with white picket fences. Women have crushes on Elvis and Rock Hudson. They walk around wearing polka dot dresses with big, bulky hairstyles. And all the men have names like Billy and Johnny and wear varsity jackets.
It's tearing me apart!
It plays on a lot of the conventions of the 1950s, especially sci-fi films about aliens and UFOs. Movies like The Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Plan 9 from Outer Space. Just kind of making fun of all the tropes of the decade in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way, and none of it's meant to be taken all that seriously. In fact, if someone plays this in 2020 and actually takes any kind of offense to the game's satire of political standpoints, well, then you've missed the entire point of the game. I mean, communism gets as much of a rag here as blind patriotism does. So put down that soy latte and just take a deep breath, right?
Thanks a million, Daddy-O.
Freaking A.
You're playing as an alien simply named Crypto, a clone that's part of the malevolent Furon Empire, come to Earth with his superior orthopox, who's voiced by Richard Horvitz, who also did the voice work for Zim in Invader Zim.
Why was there bacon in the soup? I made it myself!
A TV series which also happens to be about a short, angry little alien that shouts all the time, and also highly recommended viewing.
Wait! Crypto! The signal is too strong! Humans are weak! Their minds can't take that kind of amplitude!
Not to mention, Crypto is voiced by Grant Albrecht, who did the voice of Grout in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines and also voiced the End in Metal Gear Solid 3.
What's shaking, Pox? You look a little, what's the word? Constipated.
Anyway, Crypto's been sent to Earth because another Furon clone has been captured by the US government, and Orthopox has Crypto scout around to find out what the humans know. He's come here to suck out brains, dish out anal probes, and chew bubblegum, and he's all out of gum.
Woo-wee!
Right off the bat, the game's humour comes through pretty damn thick. The opening mission starts with you trying to communicate with a herd of cows as your first point of contact with the planet. The cow's obviously not responding to Crypto's probing, and he takes this as an insult, so you instead have to kill all of them with your telekinesis powers. After that, the most cliche farmer you've ever seen stumbles out of his house to see what the racket is all about. So you promptly zap this guy to death and then suck his brains out. The whole intro mission ends with you murdering a bunch of cops, then going full Independence Day mode and destroying the entire farm with your saucer.
Did you see what I saw?
The second mission has you sneaking into a carnival, donning a holographic disguise before mind-controlling the local beauty queen and leading her back to your saucer for a bit of probing. Seems my boy Crypto's got a thing for dummy thick earth women. Truly a man of culture.
Freaking A.
For the third mission, you're going under disguise as the town mayor, who's doing the funniest Kennedy impersonation I think I've heard since Mayor Quimby from The Simpsons, trying to avoid all of the questions about the recent alien activity by just redirecting them to take another jab at communism.
Yeah, that's right. Give it up. Let's hear it from me.
This game just lets you get away with some downright mischievous stuff, the kind of thing that you'd really expect from a character who's kinda like an alien version of Dennis the Menace.
Attention!
Good work, Crypto!
The campaign is split up between 6 different areas, all based off US cities. You've got Santa Modesta, which is kinda based off California, through to Capital City, which is based off Washington DC. And don't worry, you're gonna be blowing shit up at all of these locations. Crypto's got a whole heap of gadgets to play around with too, and you're always updating these through DNA earned by completing missions, or just sucking the brains or assholes out of unfortunate humans. You've got a jetpack that never runs out, and a new addition being the energy skates for getting around faster, along with a regenerating energy shield that recharges so slowly that you might actually be able to go out and invent an energy shield in real life before it's replenished. Your most basic weapon is the Zap-O-Matic, a lightning gun that's about as effective as static shock at first, but then you can upgrade this thing to the point that it arcs between multiple targets. The Disintegrator Ray though is where shit gets done. Now this is kind of like a plasma gun that you can upgrade so it fires faster the more it hits enemies. Also with the bonus effect of it disintegrating someone once they're killed. Kinda looking like what happens when someone gets hit by one of those ray guns in Mars Attacks. Finally, you've got the Ion Detonator, which is basically just a grenade launcher. It's a large ball that you shoot up that charges up on the ground for a couple of seconds, or can even be exploded by pressing the fire button for a second time. Seeing as humans aren't exactly known for keeping spare ammo stock for Zap-O-Matics, you've got to get by making your own, by transmogrifying random objects including cars and tanks. Yeah, transmogrifying kinda sounds like something out of a Harry Potter book. What's also a pretty cool addition to the remake is a weapon wheel, which makes selecting weapons a lot faster than having to manually cycle through them like in the base game. Much better than pressing R2 over and over. Outside of that, you've got Crypto's less offensive abilities, and this little guy's walking around with more tricks up his metallic sleeves than Batman. Telekinesis is probably one of the coolest ones. Now with this you can pick up humans or nearby objects and hurl them into the air or even at each other.
Don't make me come. Bow down before me.
Later on you can upgrade it to pick up cars and even tanks, and there is something kinda ironic about blowing up a tank with another tank. The last few abilities are the ones you're going to use in the game's many stealth missions, and yeah, get used to sneaking around in this game because roughly half of it has you avoiding detection, like some green-skinned version of Sam Fisher.
I am not green.
A lot of Crypto's missions are about trying to gather intel and discover what those pesky humans are getting up to. And this involves investigating the army, the air force, and then a secret agency called Majestic. These guys are basically the Men in Black, just minus the talking pug.
Thank God.
You see, it's not always about just walking in the front door and zapping people or turning them into ashes. Sometimes you need a more subtle approach. Off the back of that, what you'll be using the most here is the Holobob, where you can take a holographic disguise of any other living human and take on their appearance. This becomes really useful for sneaking into those high security areas. A high-ranking scientist or army officer has no problem waltzing through the front door of Area 42, whereas a blonde bimbo with a short skirt, probably less so. To keep this thing topped up, you need to frequently read the minds of nearby humans, which alone nets some pretty funny results.
I have to report to Hoover again. Please, God, let him be wearing pants this time.
To throw a spanner in the works, you've got to look out for Majestic agents and their EMP machines, which can bugger up that little hologram of yours faster than you can say "Ollie Ollie oxen free." Aside from that, you can charm humans, having them follow and even fight alongside you. You can go all neuralizer and wipe their memories, or even just use them as a distraction, causing them to draw the attention of nearby NPCs. Because I know that if in real life I ever see someone clucking like a chicken, I stop what I'm doing immediately and walk over to watch them intently. Yeah, fair crack, I actually probably would. Now, this whole system does work okay for the most part, but this is an aspect of the remake that's going to remind you that you're basically playing a remake of a game from 2005. I mean, for instance, you don't really get any kind of indication as to the distance you need to be from humans before they start detecting you, or even what direction they're detecting you from, which can be a bit of a problem when you're trying to sneak down a street that's got like a dozen people moving around. Expect a few mission restarts early on because of this, and on the subject of restarts, there's no restart checkpoint option in the menu. You can only restart the entire mission or have to fail it and then wait for it to throw you back to the last checkpoint.
It's tearing me apart!
You can look at the wanted level in this game almost kind of like you're playing Grand Theft Auto. At the lowest level you're just dealing with the cops, but then if it gets higher than that, the army's brought in, before finally the Majestic agents show up with their EMP bombs and energy weapons. Trying to lose this wanted level is done by turning on the Holobob, but this can only be done by breaking line of sight, which is something that's easier said than done because once enemies are chasing after you, they don't seem to really stop, and they seem to know where you are at all times. The only time you have to use stealth is during a few key missions, and if you are detected, it's mission over, and you're back to the nearest checkpoint. So yeah, it is an antiquated system, but honestly, I don't think it's one that's game breaking, and it plays out how you'd expect for a mechanic that's essentially 15 years old. Usually after you've snuck around for a bit, Orthopox gives you free reign to just go back out there and start murdering everyone anyway. So just know that if you're struggling with getting through one of these crappier stealth sections, that in the next bit you're going to be able to get some payback.
That must have been expensive.
When you're not on foot, you're in Crypto's flying saucer, and this is where it starts to get pretty damn fun. And at this point your objective just usually consists of blowing stuff up. The saucer has its own weapons too, all of which are pretty cool. Your basic weapon for this thing is the Death Ray, which is pretty accurate to its name. Fires a large beam down on the ground like that weird kid in primary school burning ants with a magnifying glass. And now in the remake it has an alternate aim mode where you can fire directly downwards instead of only outward. Next you'll get the Sonic Boom, a pretty powerful shockwave attack that levels buildings in a few hits. Before finally you've got the Quantum Deconstructor, the BFG of the Saucer's weapons. Fire off this bad boy and watch an entire suburb disappear from existence along with your ammo count. Yeah, this thing runs out faster than a Simp's PayPal account during a cam show. The Source is also equipped now with a shield that can bounce projectiles away and a tractor beam. All the essentials one's going to need for taking over the planet. And when all the pieces come together, Destroy All Humans is charming and evil fun. There's something undeniably enjoyable about wreaking havoc on unsuspecting humans, then picking up and throwing around army tanks and retro-futuristic robots like they're kids' toys. Going back and spending your DNA on upgrades for all of Crypto's gear and the Saucer gives you a reason to try to complete all of these optional objectives and missions as well. Yeah, that's something new they've tried to add in to make the game a bit more challenging. I think the user interface for the mothership is also vastly improved and much faster to navigate. Just one of the many quality of life inclusions that this remake offers up. Getting through the main story missions took me about 7 to 8 hours, and then after that you've got all of the challenges to complete, with there being 4 in each area. These have been improved too, and these areas made much more appealing now thanks to the game's visuals. Yeah son, another Unreal Engine 4 game, and one that doesn't run like complete shit.
Did you see what I saw?
At least I never had any performance issues when I ran this thing on PC, so fingers crossed that the consoles hold up the same. I love the more cartoonish look they've gone for with this one too. Some of the modelling for the female NPCs, shall we say more ample frames, soldiers with their thick jaws and underbites.
Yes, sir. Right away.
And farmers walking around in overalls just all kind of adds to the light-hearted but still playfully evil tone.
Absolutely.
Now, this might not be seen as a perfect remake for some people, and it does take a few liberties with certain things here and there, which might piss off some people. Mostly those who have an eidetic memory of the original game, along with an aversion to sunlight and interacting with other humans. One mission in particular though in the original game had you defending these 2 radio towers from the military, and you had to hold out for several waves which got increasingly more difficult. This time though with the same mission in the remake, you instead have to do this section on foot, and it makes it a lot harder. And it almost kind of seems like they just forgot to let you use the saucer for this bit. The order of some of the missions I think also might be different, and for one of the boss fights in particular, the boss behaves completely differently. Even to the point that I thought she might have been broken. While shooting weapons has definitely been improved, there's still some issues when you're trying to lock onto a specific target, especially when there's like half a dozen other things next to it. I mean, trying to pick up an explosive barrel for instance and picking up a trash can next to it instead. I didn't notice any serious game-breaking bugs though. I mean, there was a few times when NPCs might be floating or something, but nothing that caused my game to crash or my computer to start spewing out smoke like I just tried to run Minecraft with ray tracing on.
Thank God!
And it's worth reinforcing again that this is a remake, not a remaster, and look, there is a substantial difference between the two of those. I don't think I have the energy to go over the difference between the two of those, but I will muster up enough to say that if you call this thing a remaster, well, then I think Crypto might have also sucked out your brains. My point is that it doesn't outright emulate the original gameplay. What it does do though is best update it as much as possible, improving it where it can, along with carrying across the original game's humour and tone, which is one of that game's biggest strengths because let's be honest, writing aside, the original game it wasn't any kind of masterpiece.
The eggheads were actually onto something? I don't believe it.
I mean, it was fine, but it's more lived on as a cult classic because it was unique and creative, but also because it had the benefit of coming out smack dab in the middle of what's gone on to become one of the biggest demographic of gamers, and that being the early to mid 2000s kids who grew up on the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox, and then eventually migrated over to the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. And that's the people who this game is ultimately aimed at.
Do you have any objections?
This is just a better playing version of a 2005 game in a 2020 engine, and that is an important distinction to make, but that's not a bad thing, and it's an intentional design choice. And I'm going to be interested to see what some of the bigger review sites have to say about this thing, considering that whole recent debacle we had with the SpongeBob game. Having said all of this, I loved almost every single second I spent with this game. It was escapism at its absolute finest.
My way's more fun.
Dealing out anal probes to greasers in between throwing around cows and cop cars with my telekinesis powers.
Good work, Crypto!
And then decimating entire buildings with a death ray in my flying saucer. The only thing you've got to worry about Destroy All Humans destroying is your spare time. Luckily for me, my spare time is worthless.
You said a mouthful, cupcake.
And any game that takes the piss out of communism is alright in my books.
Freaking A.